In the collective memory of the Kurdish people in Iran, this week is a dark week. 39 years ago, on August 19, 1979, only a few months after the liberation of the Iranian peoples from the scourge of the Shah's dictatorship, Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa calling for jihad against the Kurds. He ordered the armed forces of the Islamic Republic to suppress with as much brutality as possible the population and political organizations of the Iranian Kurdistan. A few months earlier, the Iranian army had bombed the city of Sanandaj, killing hundreds of innocent civilians. Khomeini's fatwa constituted the official declaration of war and the formal beginning of a systematic offensive on Kurdistan, which in its scale and the weapons used by the regime resembled an armed conflict between states. First Pave and Merivan, then Mahabad, and all cities of the Iranian Kurdistan were targeted. In order to carry out this plan of reoccupation of Kurdistan and confront the resistance of the Peshmerga, the regime did not only put Kurdistan under siege, but also resorted to the most atrocious and forbidden forms of violence. Zadeh Khalkhali, head of the regime's revolutionary corps, sentenced hundreds of Kurds to death by execution. Iranian army aviation and artillery bombed Kurdish cities. In many places, mass murders were committed by Iranian forces against Kurdish civilians. Karne, Kalatan, Chakal Mustafa, and Khalifalian in Nagadeh, the city of Nagadeh, Inderkash, Usukand, Sauzi, and Kargol in Mahabad, Halakosh and Gecha in Urumia, Sarokamish in Bokan, Sofyan in Piranshar, Bayzavi in Oshnoviye. These are only some of the villages and cities in which the Iranian forces brutally massacred defenseless innocent Kurdish civilians. Tens of thousands of Kurdish inhabitants were also relocated by force. All of this constitutes war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Khomeini's fatwa against the Kurds came at a time when the situation in Kurdistan was comparable to the prevailing situation in the rest of Iran, namely a revolutionary situation in which the population managed by its own efforts to put an end to the Shah's regime and took control of public buildings and barracks of the army. The difference with the rest of Iran, however, was that the Kurds refused to accept the mullah's intention to steal the revolution of the Iranian peoples for their sole interest. The Kurds, from the beginning, realized the exact nature and vision of the new regime and were the only group in Iran to boycott the so-called referendum aimed at legitimizing the advent of an Islamic Republic in Iran. The new regime in Tehran was adamant to suppress Kurdish aspirations in Iran, not only because Kurdistan was asking for autonomy, but also because, contrary to the regime's policies, the Kurds desired to build a secular and an open entity, an inclusive society which is built on universal values, including human rights, freedom of speech, pluralism, peaceful coexistence, religious tolerance, and gender equality. Nowhere has the Islamic Republic acted as brutally as in the Iranian Kurdistan. The reason was that Kurdistan was more determined than all the other parts of Iran to defend its freedom. Moreover, the vision of the Kurds and the Kurdistan model were in stark contrast to the philosophy and the project of the Islamic Republic. Unlike the propaganda of the Islamic Republic, The Kurds do not like war and violence. We are a peace-loving nation. Kurds in Iran have always supported political openness and democratic participation. Their leaders were even murdered at the negotiating table with the Islamic Republic. Yet the Kurds of Iran have relived what happened 39 years ago every year over and over again. During these 4 decades, Kurds have always been victims of oppression and discrimination. Thousands of Kurdish civil and political activists have been imprisoned, tortured, executed. Political parties are still banned, and civil society organizations are deprived of real opportunity of action. The Kurdish language is still banned in schools. The ethnic demography of the strategic regions of Iranian Kurdistan has been deliberately and systematically changed. The natural environment of Kurdistan is seriously damaged. They deliberately set fire to the forests of Kurdistan, divert the waters of Kurdistan to the central regions of Iran by building dams. Archaeological sites and valuable mines, particularly in the southern areas of Kurdistan, are ransacked. Compared to the rest of Iran, Kurdistan is left in a state of underdevelopment. Security forces of the regime on daily basis open fire on carriers called kolbar, whose only source of income and survival is to transport goods across borders. For the past 39 years, Khomeynis Fatwa against the Kurds of Iran has been implemented in the silence of the media and the near indifference of Iranian society or the international community. Today, the initial assessment of the Kurds about the nature and the vision of the Islamic Republic and the fate that was awaiting Iran under this regime is revealed to be true. Now that, under international pressure and civil protests, this regime is nearing its end, it's essential for all sides to understand that respecting the rights of all ethnic groups in Iran is of paramount importance. Without realizing the legitimate demands of ethnic groups, there will be no chance for democracy and freedom to flourish in a new Iran. Those who claim that Iran's future is important to them must know that the future they want for this country will never see the light of day without adopting a constructive and courageous approach to the Kurdish question and more generally to the issue of ethnic coexistence in Iran. For several years, mainly due to the role of the Peshmerga in the war against terrorism and ISIS, the Kurds are perceived as an important factor for stability in the Middle East and its future. But again, the Kurds of Iran are neglected and marginalized, which is paradoxical given their importance in the history of the Kurdish movement and their potential constructive impact on the future of Iran and the region. Peace and stability in the Middle East and constructive, lasting relations of this region with the rest of the world will only be possible if a democratic and moderate regime replaces the Islamic Republic in Iran. Everyone who shares this view should be mindful of the fact that this goal will be achieved faster and better if greater attention and support is given to Kurds in Iran.